For us. Joining us now, Pentagon correspondent for the New York Times, Helene Cooper, national security and intelligence reporter at Foreign Policy, Amy McKinnon, and MSNBC contributor Mike Barnicle. Jonathan Lemire still with us as well. Helene, let me begin with you. I mean, you hear those stories from the ground. You're reminded of what's happening in Mariupol at this very moment, and there's no wonder why Ukrainians don't trust. I mean, skepticism, I think, puts it too lightly. Just don't trust Russia in these negotiations as they're sitting down in Turkey. It's a beginning. It's a start. But everything they've talked about is very hypothetical. Everything is sort of pie in the sky. When you look at what's happening on the ground, why would Ukraine trust Russia at this point?
Hi. Yeah, from the beginning of this conflict, Vladimir Putin has shown us that you really cannot believe anything that Russian diplomats or Russian envoys or that he says. And it's clear that this whole idea of Russia drastically reducing its strikes in Chernihiv or in its troop presence and attacks on Chernihiv and on Kiev is actually basically a front for the fact that they're losing there. They're not drastically reducing anything. All through the night, they were striking these cities. But what is at play on the ground is the fact that the Russian military, both in Kyiv and in Chernihiv, have been largely stalled for weeks. They have been beaten back by the Ukrainian military. So it's a little bit sort of ironic in the extreme that Vladimir Putin would then turn around and say that he's going to calm down there. He's calming down there because in many ways he's been beat back. His troops haven't been able to move at all. So I think that's very much the Pentagon seems to think that was a disguise in a very unusually sharply worded press conference yesterday. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby said, beware, we're not going to believe this. This is much more. We expect that this is more repositioning, and Russia is pivoting towards the eastern part of the country, the Donbass region. And even there, they still have quite a bit of a fight, but they're focusing on that region because that for Putin to have any chance of trying to sell his 1 month foray into Ukraine as any kind of a victory to the Russian people, he has to, at the very least, get Donbass, and he has to have some kind of land bridge between Crimea and the Donbass region, and that's why Mariupol has been taking such a pounding in the south. But he still doesn't even have Mariupol, so it's the events of the last night certainly show that I think in many ways this is a cynical ploy by Russia to buy itself some negotiating time.
Yeah, the Pentagon yesterday, quick to point out, they don't view this as a pullback by Russia. It's a change in strategy, perhaps, as you say. And Amy, in your new piece in Foreign Policy, you kind of lay out a series of potential outcomes here, a way of perhaps saving face at home for Vladimir Putin, or just a way out of this. Which of those do you find to be most likely as we watch him continue to wipe out Mariupol, for example, but to suffer losses, frankly, around Kyiv and other places in Ukraine?
Well, what we wanted to do with this piece is, I mean, it's been clear for the past couple of weeks now that Russia was not going to achieve its initial aim of rapidly toppling Kiev and overthrowing the Ukrainian government. And so it was clear that the Russians were at some point going to have to shift their strategy. And what we wanted to do was kind of lay out, really cover the waterfront of where the potential options are of where this conflict may go. My colleagues and I spoke to over a dozen U.S. and European officials, as well as military analysts and regional experts, to try and unpack what they saw as the most likely scenarios of where this conflict may go. And all were pretty quick to point out that war is inherently unpredictable, that this conflict has already taken a number of twists and turns, which many could not have predicted. But there were 5 key scenarios which emerged, and I think that the ultimate result may actually be a combination of some of these scenarios. And I mean, what we have seen in the past couple of days really does kind of bear out some of our reporting that, Russia may well now look to focus its efforts on eastern Ukraine, on the Donbass. I mean, as we heard from the Pentagon yesterday, Russia is claiming that it is pulling back from Kiev, but Western officials really warning that what they may be doing is just preparing for a far more fierce assault on eastern Ukraine. There's a significant portion of Ukraine's armed forces are positioned there, and if Russia is able to surround them and cut them off, that could be quite a pivotal moment in the conflict going forward.
Well, yesterday the president was asked, if he believed Vladimir Putin in terms of withdrawing or scaling back on his assault on Ukraine, and his answer was very tentative. We will see. And I guess the question I have for Jonathan Lemire is what is left in the administration's toolbox and in NATO's toolbox if Vladimir Putin once again is lying?
Well, certainly White House officials believe that Vladimir Putin, once again, is lying. And right now, it's trying to do more of the same and even greater pace. President Biden yesterday held a secure video call with the leaders of Italy, Germany, the United Kingdom, and France, and urged them to keep it going, to say, look, though the war seems to be going poorly for Russia at this moment, it's not the time to ease up. We need to keep the economic pressure on, the sanctions on, as well as the equipment on. So Mike Barnicle, the state of play here. We heard, some encouragement from the Ukrainians yesterday in terms of their negotiations with Russians, some concessions for the first time they might be willing to give. But certainly the West doesn't feel like Moscow is serious, at least not yet, about actually making a deal, that even if they're more likely repositioning forces than actually pulling any out. It's not a ceasefire if you're still bombing eastern Ukraine. So what should be the approach here? Can you eventually take Putin and Moscow at their word?
I don't know, because Putin lies. He sends low-level functionaries to the negotiating table in Istanbul. People might be, the third deputy registrar of the Registry of Motor Vehicles. I mean, they are not anybody with any clout. But Helene, Amy's piece lists 5 potential ends to the war: stalemate, partition, victory, a peace agreement, or a black swan event, like the introduction of chemical weapons. My question to you, given the fact that each of those possibilities involves what Vladimir Putin wants to do, no one else but Vladimir Putin, what is the latest you can tell us in terms of communication between the Pentagon, between our top generals, the Joint Chiefs, and the Russians? Is there any?
That's a really frighteningly easy answer. No, they have not been talking. We ask this question every day at the Pentagon, and every day we hear back, no, there hasn't been communication. There is a deconfliction line that they call that's open, and they test that twice a day. And so that's there, but that's there for in case of like an emergency that's too scary really to necessarily think about right now. The whole Russia has not been open to phone calls from General Milley or the Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin. General Milley, Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, they've stopped trying to talk to their Russian counterparts. They haven't had talks in quite some time. So the idea of sort of an open line of communication between the U.S. and Russia is not necessarily there, except for at a low level. So it's as this has gone on, this becomes increasingly sort of tense. But it's also been a case of watching the Russian military show on the ground the limits of what it can do.
And Helene Cooper, are you hearing anything from your contacts, your sources about Mariupol? We have some reports from high-level Ukrainian sources that they need weapons to try and make a last-ditch attempt to protect this city, which is basically flattened, but that we're days away from Mariupol being taken completely. And that the difference between saving Mariupol and having it taken completely is something about getting weapons over the Polish border, but waiting for permission from other countries, maybe the U.S. Are you hearing anything about sort of blockages in coordination?
The Pentagon says there hasn't been blockages. They insist that they have been getting weapons into Ukraine fairly quickly, within days of approval from the White House. So that's something that if you talk to the people here, they think that they're getting things over there fairly quickly. But of course, on the ground in Mariupol, it's going to be a lot different because this is a city that's been under siege for weeks now, and has held out. So there's been almost, from the outside, this expectation that Mariupol would fall at any moment, and it hasn't. It has continued to hold out in large part because of the fierce resistance by these very brave Ukrainian troops on the ground. So I would not at this point predict an end for Mariupol, but the city has been largely, as you say, flattened by Russia, in an absence, without the ability to take it over, similar to what they've done in Kharkiv, without the ability to actually win on the ground. They've just struck and struck and struck from the air.
Amy, Moscow obviously badly miscalculated. They thought that they could perhaps topple Kyiv within a matter of days. Here we are past the month mark, and there's no sign of that. U.S. officials also seem to have overestimated the strength of the Russian military, and they're conducting their own review, as we reported today. But what is your sense of it? What went so badly wrong for the Russian military?
I think there's several answers to that question. I mean, one is, there's serious questions about what kind of information Vladimir Putin is getting from his top officials. We know that he's been very isolated during the COVID-19 pandemic. Officials that want to see him have had to isolate for 2 weeks at a time. And also, it's a facet of authoritarian regimes that the more authoritarian they become, the more afraid officials become to give honest answers to senior leadership. I mean,
hey, thanks so much for watching our YouTube channel. You can follow up on today's top stories and breaking news, or catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.